So the next question that we are going to talk about is the difference between the Power BI personal gateway and the data management gateway. So first of all, we need to understand what is gateway. Okay. So to understand the gateway, we need to imagine a scenario. Let's just say that the organization you are working in has maintained the data on premise and not on cloud. Now, just in case you do not know, so when we say on premise and on cloud, we are just talking about the locations. When the data that organization is using is suppose hosted in the premise, then we called it on premise. And when the data is hosted by the third party service providers like Amazon, Microsoft Azure, then we say the data is hosted on a cloud. We all use Gmail, so Gmail is nothing but an example of a cloud, right? So when do you think gateway comes into picture? It comes into picture when the data is maintained by the organization on premise and not on cloud. In that case, we use the gateway. Speaking of the gateway, there are two types of gateways. The first one is personal gateway, and the second is data management gateway. We'll talk about it one by one. Speaking of personal gateway, when do we use it? So the personal gateway is designed for the individual users or the small businesses where generally the data volume is relatively low. Therefore, the gateway is installed on the user's local machine. Also, in case of Power BI personal gateway, the data refresh is done manually, which is not the case when we talk about the other gateway. Okay. Now, speaking of the other gateway, that is data management gateway. This is specifically designed for the larger organizations having the huge amount of data, and the team working on the Power BI service would also be relatively high. In those scenarios, we use the data management gateway. So in the previous case, we understood that the gateway is installed in the user's local machine, but in case of data management gateway, it is installed in the server within your organization's network. Now, unlike the personal gateway, this data management gateway will help you for the scheduled data refresh. To answer this question in the interview, first of all, you should tell them when do we use the gateway. We use the gateway because the Power BI service is hosted on cloud, whereas the data is maintained on premise. Okay, in that scenario, we use gateway. So there are two ways to use gateways. The first one is personal gateway. In the personal gateway, what happens? The gateway is installed on the user's local machine and there is a manual refresh, and this is generally used by the smaller organizations or if there are individual users, whereas the data management gateway is used for the larger organizations when the team is also bigger and the data is also huge. In case of data management gateways, we can have the scheduled refresh. Okay, so I hope this will give you some idea to answer this question in the interview. Thank you so much.